Hello and welcome to Finding Flow Parenting, the podcast where we help you to get more joy, ease and flow in family life. With me, your host, Emily Hughes, conscious parenting coach and mum of two. Each week, I'll be joined by a special guest to explore a question posed by you, my lovely audience. Expect expansive reframes, tools, self-awareness and a whole load of empathy. Parenting is a wild ride, but together we've got this. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by a good friend of mine and collaborator. We've collaborated on a few things together, Charlotte Mindell. She is a mother and somatic therapist who supports mothers to heal their relationship with themselves. She supports them to reconnect with their body's wisdom so that they can live, parent and love from a place of wholeness and authenticity. She runs the Embodied Mother program and collective. Hi, Charlotte. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Emily. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Great. And we have a really, really juicy question, which I just love for us today to discuss, which is such a common thing. And the question is, I often feel distracted when I'm with my children. How can I be more present? I think so many people can relate to that question. So what are your first thoughts upon hearing that question, Charlotte?
Definitely that I can relate. I think that there's a couple of things that come up. One is that I believe mothers can be or parents. I work with mothers, so I tend to reference them more. But I believe that parents can be really hard on themselves and set really high standards. And I think there's a lot of inner comparison that goes on, and we can see snippets of other people's lives or hear things on social media and think that we should be doing more. And I think presence is kind of one of those things that we can set to such a high bar that it's really challenging to meet. And the other thing is, I think that very often we think of presence as something that happens within a relationship between us and another person. And I actually think that the foundation of presence is more to do with us and our relationship with ourselves and how much capacity we have to sit with ourselves. Whenever I hear of someone being distracted, obviously there are just busy lives and things to do, but I'm always curious about kind of what is the experience of someone's inner world that is leading to that distracted feeling. Are they actually finding it really uncomfortable and hard to sit and be present? Is there something about the interaction that isn't comfortable for them, or something about sitting in that space just as themselves that isn't comfortable? And so I think it's often actually much deeper and much more layered, kind of the things that might block us from feeling more present. So yeah, I'd say those are the kind of the immediate things that come up for me.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting. So you use the word block there. And I think when we're comparing ourselves to other people, and when that word should is in the room that you said, it's almost like we're almost sort of leaving our body and our awareness. We're focusing kind of on what's over there, which is really a sort of barrier to being embodied. And yeah, it sort of strikes me, and I wonder whether you'd describe it like this, but what do you think the relationship is between being present and being embodied? And maybe for listeners who maybe aren't that familiar with that word, because obviously that's a word you use a lot in your work. How would you describe what it means to be embodied? And what do you think the relationship there is between embodiment and presence?
Yeah, embodied, describing that. I think for some reason the word integrity kind of comes to mind straight away. I think there's something about being in connection with your body.
Yeah.
So being able to identify that you do have an experience of your body, that your body speaks to you, it communicates with you, it responds to your environment and to the world around you. Yeah, I guess it's like a connection and being in relationship to that. And then that sort of deeper sense of embodiment. It's almost, there's like a truth and integrity and authenticity of being. And so however or whoever you're being in that moment, there's something that feels kind of grounded. Like, I almost want to like pull my hand down into my body. There's a sense of kind of, I'm living from even like my womb space, like something that's quite low down within me. That's kind of where my experience is coming from. And so I think when it comes to presence, again, when I think of distraction is so often something that happens quite high up in our mind. It might be that our thoughts are really busy. I mean, it can really be a distraction of our body, like a physical feeling that we want to get out of the space, or we want to be doing something, even like hanging the laundry up or cooking, like something that enables us to use our body in some way. And there's a pull, maybe actually we're just not comfortable with sitting still or kind of being in stillness, which I think is totally fine. To have that experience, it's always about kind of being curious about, why is it that I want to either be busy with something else or doing something else? And so I think the relationship between embodiment and presence is quite an interesting one. I certainly think embodiment, being in relationship with your body, can help you with presence, because it gives you this window of opportunity to get curious about why you might be struggling with being present. I kind of often see that there's this gap between the experience that we're having and the experience that we want to be having.
Yeah.
And in that place, there's just a really nice opportunity to receive information, to ask questions, to explore, like, what is it like to sit here and actually bring all of my focus and my energy in moment, or where is it being drawn to? What is that thing that's really pulling me away? And maybe that is something, maybe I'm trying to protect a future self. Maybe I want to hang the laundry now so I don't have to do it tonight because I don't want to be tired. There are so many things that can affect our experience in the moment. But I think certainly without embodiment, without connection and a relationship to our body, it's very hard to even start to explore why we might be finding presence challenging. But I think there are also steps to get there, because for some people, depending on their lived experience, their body is going to be quite an unfamiliar or uncomfortable kind of terrain to start exploring or to start being with. So I don't think there's not that we need to fix it anyway, but there's not kind of an easy solution to just becoming embodied and then finding present. The other word that really comes to mind with presence and thinking about embodiment is capacity. I guess when we're in relationship with our body, we can get curious about what is our capacity to hold space for another person. I guess that's often what presence is when we're thinking about it in relationship with our children. It's like holding space for their imagination, their creativity, their needs, like from us. And so if actually we're quite contracted inside and we have a lot going on, then we might not have capacity to do that. And so it's like really about kind of exploring that and how you can expand your capacity in order to get that presence.
I love that idea that you can expand your capacity for presence. And I think that everything you've said so far makes so much sense, that people are quite hard on themselves if they're not immediately present. And actually, maybe a more generous way of thinking about it is, what if you were to look at this as like a year-long project to build capacity for presence? And that might look a bit like a minute of presence to begin with. And what would that look like? And then the next day, a minute and a half of presence. And I think part of this is really, so many parents that I work with are really stuck in hypervigilance and just being very alert And I think this comes from being unsupported in early parenthood. And really, we're meant to be in a tribe with many other adults supporting us. And our nervous systems feel that loss of other people. We're kind of doing the nervous system work of many other people. And it's getting us, activated. And it's very hard to be activated and in this present. This is sort of, the two of them don't go together, because there's a certain, for me, it feels like you need to feel safe in order to feel present. And if you're stuck in survival mode, that to me feels harder. But I really like this idea. I was working with this client a while ago, and we just had this idea of pockets of presence. That was the phrase that came up. Just pockets of presence. And then saying to yourself, that's enough right now. Because I think so often with this, you said people are putting this comparison on. We're putting this comparison that we need to be present with our children for hours, right? And maybe we're not there yet. And maybe just accepting that perhaps I'm not there yet with being present with my child for hours. And that's where I'm at right now. And I think, in my personal journey, I stopped fighting with myself so much about being present. I actually focused on, can I be present for 2 minutes? Can I be present for 5 minutes? And I feel like right now I have capacity to be present for about 7 minutes. And I'm not beating myself up about that anymore. I can be present for 7 minutes and then I get wriggly and I'm kind of, get squirmy. But I think that that's enough for me right now. That feels like I've built my capacity up to about 7 minutes. That's where I'm at. I've kind of made my peace with that, and I've stopped fighting with myself, because it kind of strikes me, and I wonder what you think about this, that actually fighting with yourself is a thing that really takes you away from presence.
Yeah, completely. And what I hear from you is just how important it is to give ourselves permission, whether it's with thinking of it as a year-long journey, whether it's these small increments of time. I've definitely done the same. Something that I've used and I love recommending is setting a timer for those minutes and however many minutes it is. And even if you get distracted, so I know I've set a timer, let's say for 10 minutes in the past, and I've made the intentional commitment, okay, I'm just going to be here and I'm going to be present for 10 minutes. And if I pick up my phone, I see the timer's on, I say, okay, I got distracted, but there's something really freeing about giving yourself permission. And I
Yeah,
think when you try, and when it's kind of all or nothing, and you try and do a half a day of
yeah,
presence, just you
yeah,
wake up and I'm going to be so present with my child today. I'm going to spend the whole morning playing with them, doing exactly what
yes,
they want, like giving them all of my attention. Then we're really setting ourselves up for this experience of failure, because I
yeah,
actually don't think it's so natural. I think
yeah,
there's a couple of things that came up for me. One is that it's super luxurious to be able to do that, because as you said, most of us do not live in this really connected community, this village spirit. And even if we did, our children would be out playing with other
they
children most
would.
of the time.
They would.
So they
Yeah,
wouldn't be relying on us to be so present.
yeah,
But in that space, we would share the load also with other parents to meet various needs of our children, of other people's children.
hmm,
And I know when I'm on holiday and I'm taking a break and my responsibilities are lowered, and, well, yeah, I don't have my work responsibilities, I don't have my household chores, my capacity for presence is so much more there. I'm able, to sit on
yeah,
a beach and be really in the moment for quite a lot of that time. And there'll still be moments of distraction, but they'll actually be the fleeting things and the presence
yeah,
will be more there. But that's not everyday life. Most of the time, there are just so many things that are calling for our attention, because we do live in such isolated ways. But yeah,
yeah.
I think presence has been hailed as this thing that we can only respond to our children's needs or meet their needs if we're
Mm,
really present with them. And I do
yeah,
think there is something so powerful, like, you know, my daughter often, if she's watching something, she'll really enjoy one of us sitting next to her watching it
Yeah.
with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a shared experience. And even
Yeah.
that, she'll feel the difference between us sitting there on our phones versus sitting there actually
Mm.
watching it with her. And so
Yeah.
they can definitely feel that sense of presence. But I think it's, as you said, it's about their overarching experience, that they are able to connect with us and receive some presence from
Yeah.
us
Mm-hmm.
in a consistent way, but not all of the time. I just think that
Yeah.
is putting way too high an expectation on the reality of the lives and the systems and the way that we live today. I just
Mm-hmm.
think it would require a complete change in the way that we live to be able
Yeah.
to give that much of ourselves. And even then, I don't even know if that would be the right thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's
And
worth questioning these things.
yeah, I think what's been really coming up in my work with clients recently is how intensely some of them are parenting. And there is parents nowadays are spending more time, more quality time with their children than in previous generations. It's something like nearly double what it was in the 1950s. And you know, in the past there was lots of coexistence together. But as you say, there was a lot more sort of rampaging groups of children going off, and now our culture doesn't really give that much space for that. And so there is and I just feel like the culture has put so much pressure on us that in order to be a good parent, we need to be playing with our children all of the time. And actually, the truth is that parents are not really hardwired to enjoy play, right? So of course, like we're not finding it that easy. So when a parent comes to me and says, like, I'm feeling really drained by play, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't mean you're a bad parent. That means you're an adult. But you're feeling, I mean, some adults do like playing with their kids, but a lot of adults don't. I mean, it's not something that I have particularly, there's types of play with my kids that I enjoy, but I am glad that they are both out of the imaginative play phase of play, because I found that really boring. And I actually wonder whether this word boring is an interesting one for presence too, because I feel like before we had children, children are so much slower. They're inviting us into a slower way of being. And yet our culture is extremely fast. So there's a few things going on there. And then I think also, well, I was thinking actually, when do I feel most present with my kids? And it's interesting. I feel very differently present with them. Actually, I feel super present with both of them if I go swimming. And this is what I was going to say, was how sometimes thinking about our environment and what conditions do you feel most present in? So do you feel not very present at home because there's so many other things to do? Do you feel more present out in the forest? Do you feel present at the swimming pool? Do you feel present play fighting? Like, because I really enjoy play fighting with one of my kids. With one of my other kids, he likes drawing together. And I feel really present doing that because I'm sat next to him. We're both drawing together, drawing different things, right? So sometimes just expecting us to feel present is perhaps, I think, too high of an expectation. And maybe what else can we bring in to help us feel present?
Yeah, completely. And again, I think we're in an interesting phase of parenting at the moment. There's so much commentary out there and so much guidance, and I think we forget to come back to ourselves and really look at kind of what we need as much as what our children need. And I've got a 4-year-old, so I'm right in the thick of that, like, imaginative play, and she could do that from the moment she wakes up. Literally,
Mm.
often we're still doing imaginative play, at bath time, at bedtime. And I also, sometimes I'm really up for it and sometimes I am not up for it. Or I really do sometimes look at the clock and I'm like, right, I'm doing this for half an hour, which feels like a long time
Mm.
often. And then I'm going to suggest something else, or I'm going to say, I need to do some chores or whatever, and you can join me or you can do your own thing. But I think there's this thing about building a relationship. I mean, we home educate, so I spend a lot of time with her as well. And so I think maybe even in some ways it's more important to kind of be able to draw these boundaries and to be able to meet both of our needs, because it needs to be really sustainable.
Mm.
But the other day, I noticed that it was sometimes I'm most present when I'm doing something creative with her. I'm using my hands to do
Yeah.
something. And so while I'm, that's why actually I really enjoy cooking or hanging the laundry. Sometimes it's sort of just a kind of monotonous doing thing. And that really helps me to stay focused. And I just explained my brain needs to work differently for a bit. The
Yeah.
imaginative play is really fun. I really love doing it with you.
Mm.
And I feel like we need to do something creative. Can we bring it into the play? And we ended up painting a map together, like that fitted into the game that we were playing. And it just really enabled like that shift that was required, a change in energy, a change in the way. I don't even know enough about our brains and what part of my brain is engaged in imaginative play and what part is engaged in painting. But it felt like my brain needed a change. And so, again, it's like this permission to have that relationship with our children where we can just explain that to them and giving them permission as well to be able to do that with us, talking about our needs so that they can respond back to us with theirs. And it won't always be her preference. I don't know if this is controversial. I don't think it always has to be her preference. We're in a relationship, and that's generally not how life is going to go. It's always kind of a collaborative experience. And so I really see the parent-child dynamic as that. But again, like for me, I mean, I work with mothers and their experience. And so I often think about kind of things more from that perspective. And it's really, for me, when I think about these things, even though it affects our relationship and how I am with her, it's really like, how was I taking care of myself, taking care of my needs,
Mm.
bringing something in that actually supported both of us in that
Yeah.
scenario, so that I didn't just go and hide in the toilet for 10 minutes or
Yeah.
something, which I know sometimes that might be necessary as well. But I think it's like remembering that we're human beings, we have needs, and it's okay to not feel comfortable kind of in the same kind of repetitive play or the same kind of activity. And
Yeah.
completely, I think it's the same with our environment. I really relate to swimming. I mean, partly because it's a safety thing and she can't swim yet. And so I have to be present. But also,
Mm.
there's no distractions, there's
Yeah.
no screens, there's no phones, there's no other rooms to go in. It's just like you've got to be there. And that can just be so useful if you want some present time, like to consider an environment where you're kind of a bit forced into that presence. And if you still find it hard, then that's just information, and it's useful to get curious about that within
Yeah.
yourself.
I love everything we've said. This conversation's gone super fast. I'm just going to kind of sum some things up that I thought were really nice from this conversation. I think the word integrity, super, just that. We could do another podcast episode all about that word integrity, because I feel like that is such a juicy word. When you're feeling in alignment with your integrity, life is just easier. Presence is easier. Being regulated is easier. Everything's easier. Yeah, boundaries, protecting your energy. I just think that's so crucial. We can't expect to be present if we are running on empty. And I think putting gentle, kind boundaries in to protect your energy is just so vital if we want a chance to be continually present in our children's lives without depleting ourselves. And yeah, just a couple of C words. So we've got coexistence, finding the right conditions in which you will naturally be more present rather than sort of trying to shoehorn yourself into being present in situations that you find hard to be present, and just taking time to build your capacity. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I feel like this was a really helpful topic for us to talk about for so many parents. So thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Emily. I can't wait to hear it.